open, faster, more exciting, three-point play, jumpers, runners, shooters. It made an impact.
I know you got to start calling Kilgore College football, right?
That is correct. Kilgore College, really basketball at first and then football, but from 1961 to 1967, I broadcast all of the college and high school games played here at R.E. St. John Stadium.
Now, how does a person growing up in Kilgore end up Mike's side in the American Basketball Association for the Dallas Chaparrals?
Nobody else wanted the job.
Is that what it was?
Just luck. I was here in 1967, looked in the paper one night and saw they were forming an American Basketball Association, and I thought, well, they'll need an announcer. And after about 6 months of applying for the job, nobody else would take it. They let me broadcast the ball games.
It's halftime here in Kilgore with Marshall leading the Kilgore Bulldogs 10-7, visiting with Terry Stembridge, who is the former voice of the Dallas Chaparrals from the ABA, I almost said Mavericks, and the San Antonio Spurs. KMHT Radio, of course, carries the Dallas Mavericks every night they play. And let's talk about the NBA. That's a rough life because there's a lot of travel those players have to do. Even the broadcasters travel with the team. How did you make it through all those trips?
You know, today it's a real easy for those guys with their private planes. But we, in those days, when I was broadcasting, we flew commercial. When we started out in the ABA, we got $10 a day meal money. And today the teams travel in their private jets. They have stewardesses on the plane. They have their meals cooked. They never touch their baggage from the time they get to the airport until the time they get to their hotel rooms. The NBA also, as I understand, have contracts with television and electronic people, and when the players get to their hotel room, they have all the video games set up for them. It's a great life for them. But the ABA, HBO had a great documentary on the ABA, and I would recommend anybody who was interested look at it because it was a crazy league.
Of course, the three-point line was one of the biggest things, the red and white basketball. And tell me something, Kilgore, in the history of the Dallas Chaparrals, there was an exhibition game played here in Kilgore. Am I correct?
You are correct. October 3rd, 1967, the first exhibition game, the first basketball game ever in the old ABA was played here in Kilgore. Joe Turner was the coach of the Kilgore College Rangers, and he and the local Lions Club underwrote the ball game, and Dallas came down with Cliff Hagan as the player coach. He's a great player from the St. Louis Hawks, Hall of Famer, played on the 58 championship team when the Hawks beat the Boston Celtics. We had about 1,500 people at the ball game, and the basketballs were right off the press. They were brand new, they were slick, and they had a lot of bounce to them. And for about the first 10 minutes of the ball game, neither team scored. I was a little bit embarrassed, but I was delighted. That was the first of 1,252 consecutive games I did for the Chaparrals and the San Antonio Spurs.
Now, of course, the three-point line was brand new. It's my understanding at Masters Gym, three-point line, you're crazy. They had to tape it on the floor that night?
That afternoon, I was here with the general manager of the Dallas Chaparrals, Max Williams, and he and I put down the three-point line, and Babe McCarthy, a great Southeastern Conference basketball coach who had been at Mississippi State, came in and he got down there and took off his coat, and in shirt sleeves we taped down the three-point line.
Of course, calling the American Basketball Association. Now the Chaparrals became the San Antonio Spurs and moved into the NBA. And I've got to ask this question. The first time you got to call the Dr. J. Julius Erving game, what did you think?
The most phenomenal player that I'd ever seen. I still think in the context of that era, he was the most phenomenal basketball player I've ever seen. He electrified every ball game. He made every player on the floor better. And it was great to see him star walk across those basketball nights. He was sensational. But on top of that, he was one of the greatest athletes I've ever known from the standpoint of the way he conducted himself, his intelligence, his character, and he was just a very wonderful person. Still is.
Mike Midkiff here with Marshall Maverick football as the Mavericks are leading the Kilgore Bulldogs 10-7 here at halftime at R.E. St. John Memorial Stadium. Visiting with Terry Stembridge, longtime announcer of the Dallas Chaparrals and San Antonio Spurs way back then. And when I was a kid living in Abilene, Texas, I would listen to you call the Spurs on WOAI, Clear Channel 1200 in Abilene. And so I had a chance to interview 30 years ago. I was in awe, and I'm still in awe tonight. So, Terry, what are you doing now? I know you got out of the business and moved to Kilgore and started your own business, and are you still doing that?
Chasing oil and gas leases. I'm in the oil and gas business, have been for about 20 years, and been very active in the Kilgore Historical Society. We've done a couple of books on the history of Kilgore, and I was just thinking tonight as I came, this stadium here at Kilgore was once known as the Kilgore Athletic Field when it was opened in 1938. But very interestingly, the National Guard was called in the 1930s during the early riotous days of the boom, and the National Guard camped here on this hill in South Kilgore, and in 1938 they built this football field, and in 1946 it was named after a Navy captain, R.E. St. John, who had been killed during the war. But it's a great ball game tonight. Kilgore probably came in as the underdog, and they're still the underdog right now.
They sure are. We're down 10-7 here at halftime. Since we carry the Mavericks here on KMHT, the Dallas Mavericks, do you still keep your eye on the NBA? Do you still watch what the Spurs are doing, or have you got a new team, or what do you do?
No, I still pull for the San Antonio Spurs. I see a Maverick game every so often. When the Denver Nuggets come to Dallas, I like to go see Denver. George Karl was one of my friends when he was just a young player out of North Carolina at San Antonio. Friendships continued. I like to see his team play. San Antonio was a great chapter in my life. I had some great players to call the games for. James Silas, who played at Stephen F. Austin, and, of course, George Gervin. George Gervin was in that same league as Julius Erving.
The Iceman, George Gervin.
You know, I really had an opportunity when the Mavericks first started. Norm Sonju offered me the chance to be the broadcaster for the Dallas Mavericks. But I think my time had passed, and I didn't take the job.
I also know you're friends with Larry Lacewell, and there was a rumor, if it's a rumor or not, you were offered the Dallas Cowboy play-by-play position at one time, wasn't you, when Jerry Jones took over the team?
In 1998. But I wasn't sure I could see the field.
It's halftime here at R.E. St. John.
Larry Lacewell's the guy you ought to have on here. You'd get some good stories.
Yes, he was a coach here at Kilgore College back in the 60s, and, of course, later went on to Arkansas State. He spoke at one of my Kilgore High School football banquets one time when I was in high school, and, of course, later became a director of player personnel for the Dallas Cowboys.
That's right, he did, and, in fact, I talked to him today, and he was excited. He was going to Newport, Arkansas, to speak to the Rotary Club there.
All right.
So he's going to tell them a lot of those football stories that he's told over and over.
It's halftime here in Kilgore with Marshall leading 10-7. Mike Midkiff visiting with Terry Stembridge, a longtime voice heard in the NBA as well as the American Basketball Association for the Dallas Chaparrals and the almost the Dallas Mavericks again, the San Antonio Spurs. And Terry, one thing you always announcers usually have a signature line. Mark Holtz, when he was alive for the Texas Rangers, would say, "Hello, win column," when the Rangers win. There was a line that you always say, and I know what it is, but could you say that for us old-timers who used to listen to you back on WOAI?
The San Antonio Spurs have won tonight. There will be another night.
And for you folks who used to listen to that a long time ago, that is a very familiar cry by Terry Stembridge. Terry, thank you for coming by, and enjoyed visiting with you again. It's been 30-plus years.
Mike, neither one of us look a day older, but I'm humbled that you asked me up tonight. Thank you.
And you've been, I'm a Baptist pastor now, and I've used you in a couple of illustrations about being a 20-year-old kid with my small, squeaky voice, and you coming in with your booming voice, and your voice still sounds strong. Do you want to get back and do something?
I don't want to work against you. You've got that booming voice now.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Terry Stembridge, for stopping by.
Mike, it's great. Thank you.
Terry Stembridge, who started broadcasting in the American Basketball Association for the Dallas Chaparrals, who later became the San Antonio Spurs. He broadcasted over 1,200 consecutive games, Mike side, in his pro career, and so glad that he could stop by. Of course, I had a chance to visit with him 30 years ago working for KOCA Radio as a 20-year-old kid broadcasting Kilgore High School football. It's halftime here, Jamie, with our score, Marshall leading 10-7. We're going to take a break here on the Bob Smith Edward Jones halftime report and come back and talk about the scoring drives and other things.
Yeah, you were 20 years old once?
I was 20 years old once. That was 30-plus years ago.
Cheap shot again. All right, Mike, let's go ahead and take a break and be back with more of the Bob Smith Edward Jones Financial Advisor halftime show.